Beware, it's an Earth invasion. This is your look at the new NECA Toys Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is Zarax and Zork. After being accidentally exposed to radioactive ooze, 4 ordinary household pets are transformed into a band of wisecracking, pizza-loving, villain-dicing adolescent reptiles. Meet Leonardo, the super-cool sword-wielding leader, Raphael, the hothead hurling manholes and one-liners in rapid succession, Donatello, the brain behind the brawn, and Michelangelo, the ice cream pizza gobbling party animal. Whether it's facing fierce enemies or saving humanity from near extinction, with the guidance of their sensei, these heroes in a half shell are always ready for straight out of the sewer action. Now then, before we get a closer look at Xarax and Zork, the first thing we're going to do is figure out how tall the figures actually stand. I'd also like to send a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Xarax and Zork that we're having a look at in this review. These should be available right now in Target stores, so if you're in the market of picking these ones up for yourself, you may want to check there, or you can also check online as well. Stop in the tape measure at the very top of Xarax horns, as that's the highest point on the figure after all. I'm going to stop it right there. According to the readout, you're looking at Zarax, which I'm going to talk a little bit about his name in a second, standing 8.5 inches in height. Switching that to centimeters, then you're looking at the figure standing 21.5 or 21.5. Switching that then back, there we go. And now we're going to have a look at Zork. Zork, again, I'm going to take it up to, in this case, the top of his crest, because he doesn't have as tall of a horns as Zarax. And stop the tape measure right there. According to the trusty tape measure of mine, you're looking at Zork, standing 8.2 inches in height. And again, switching that to centimeters for those that favor their collectibles in centimeters. Then you're looking at Zork, standing 20.9 centimeters in height. Let's get some size comparisons going on here. I'll bring in the Triceraton Infantryman, the other figure that we had a look at. If you remember, it came with the Roadkill Rodney. 2 of them, actually. Love those figures. Some other comparisons we can also bring in. Of course, let's bring in Shredder. I always like to bring in Shredder whenever I have the chance. And of course, let's also bring in Krang. And just in case you're also curious, let's bring in just a random turtle. I mean, not so just a random turtle. It's obviously Raphael. He deserves to have his name said after all. But it kind of gives you an idea of how Zarax and Zork stack up with some of the other turtle figures that we've had a look at on this channel. Now, I believe Zarax and Zork made their first appearance in the 1987 episode of Ninja Turtles Night of the Dark Turtle. Now, the thing about it, in most of the fandom, Captain Zarax is actually referred to as Captain Zorax, Z-O-R-A-X. In this case, NECA Toys have actually named him Zarax. I'm not really sure the reasoning behind that, unless it's changed over some of the fandom. But in most of the cases, he's actually referred to as Captain Zorax. Nonetheless, though, let's have a look at the accessories that come included with the figures. Most of these accessories are things that we've seen before. When we had a look at the Triceraton Infantryman and we had a look at the Roadkill Rodneys. Love those figures. Let's have a look at those accessories right now. Now, again, some of these have made reappearances. As you can see, even though technically some of these, yes, have made reappearances, I'm all down and fine with the idea of getting more. I mean, the idea of being able to display these not only with the Triceratons, but really any of the turtles. I mean, heck, this would be an ideal weapon, of course, to be displayed with, say, a like of Rocksteady. You can see that this has been done in dark gray plastic. It doesn't just stop there. They've added some rather nice looking chestnut brown along the front of the gun, as well as they've added some dark panel lining, and I always appreciate that. That's one thing I really like about the animated series line from NECA Toys, is the fact that they do add all this additional panel lining, not only to the characters themselves, but also the accessories that come packed with the figures also. To come included also, you get this, which we again have gotten this gun before. Currently, the one that we had gotten with the Triceraton, I like to actually display with my Bebop. I just like the look of this with Bebop. And again, when it comes to your own personal collection, you can display this any which way that you want. If you want to continue to display it with either Xarax or Zork, by all means, you can do that. They come with, of course, the appropriate hands for holding the said guns. But just to give you a quick idea, we've seen this before, but again, it does require some additional spending of time, because just you look at the detail and care that NECA puts in these pieces. Just quite incredible. Lastly, one of my personal favorites from the Triceratops Infantryman that we looked at before, and this is actually the one thing that I have currently displayed with the Infantryman, is this sort of bazooka laser blaster that you can have mounted on the shoulder. Again, you've got some really rich colors here incorporated. Unfortunately, a little bit of the green has carried its way from Zork's hand, actually. You can see right there. A little bit of the green has made its appearance there on the handle. I probably could scrape that off. But you will want to just be, of course, careful, as the more times you're putting this into their figure's hands, sometimes paint does scrape off, and as a result of it, it finds its way. Is it gone now? I think it's gone. I think it's gone. It disappeared. It was there in a second, and then just like that, it was gone again. But a decent panel lining, and again, I like that airbrushing that they did on the front of it, so it kind of looks like this is glowing, ready to fire. Other accessories. It's kind of actually interesting the way that they've done this. They've given those retractable blades that Captain Zarax, or in this case Captain Zarax, has in that episode. You remember he retracts these out from his gauntlets, and he uses then to slice through Leonardo's katana like a hot knife through butter. These can be fit into Zarax's hands. Well, not so much on his hands, sort of on the gauntlet area here. What you need to do, just grab his hand, just wiggle it off. Not introducing, I'm sure, anything new to this. It's not Figures 101, but just go ahead and just pop the hand off just like that. Before you go ahead and put the new hand on, you'll have to pry this off. Now, you will come across, I'm sure, a little bit of paint that's come off in the process, but don't worry. I mean, it's going to happen with all these figures, because you're probably going to have like the paint rubbing off on the inside of this bracelet. Now, when you are putting the new blade on, there is a specific way to do it. Let me just show you the inside right here. I don't know if you can see it. There's this little tab piece sticking up. It isn't actually a complete circle. In fact, when you're looking at the inside of it, you kind of get a better idea of what I'm talking about. See that little lip of plastic? So when you are putting it on the wrist, if you're not careful and you're careless about it, you'll just try to put it on anywhere and it's not going to fit in place. Instead, what you actually have to do is you have to get that tab fit into that slot and then kind of fit it in like so. And then you'll have to then take the blade and fit it around, and it fits perfectly fine, fits perfectly in place. But if you do it, and it's the same thing for the bracelets, the regular non-bladed ones. See right there, there's a little tab right at the bottom. You're probably seeing it right there. Make sure you are putting that in proper place when you are putting it onto his forearm, because if not, the bracelet isn't going to fit properly in place. And you can see, you can do this actually on both sides, as he comes with a pair of these. I'm just only putting on the one side just to show you. But like I said, though, there is two of these, and each one of them have that little peg. So just be aware of that when you are putting it into his hand. I might probably put not both of them on Zarax's hands. Maybe the idea of just putting it on one of his hands and then the other hand holds a blaster. Speaking of holding blasters, both the figures also come included with interchangeable hands. All of these hands have been things that have been reused before, and I think even dating back to the Leatherhead, all had these hands. Now, these hands also came included with the Triceratops Infantryman, and they vary, of course, in shapes and styles and purposes. This was just an extended hand that actually comes out of the figure's packaging with this hand. I just removed it, popped it right off, and I replaced it with one of the gripping hands. He also comes with a trigger firing hand, ideally suited for holding any really one of the guns. Now, some of the guns hold a little better than others. It does fit onto, not necessarily in where the trigger is, but more so on the end of that trigger covering, the cover that covers over the trigger. It sits basically right on there. And again, just showing you the other gun there as well. Some of these, again, sit really loose. You kind of have to finagle it a little bit further down. And once you kind of get it past this point right here, you'll find a little bit of friction takes over, and the gun sits a little bit better. But again, because these are slightly more larger hands, see right there, it sits a little bit better. But there are slightly more larger hands, so they're not going to completely hug the handle portion of that gun perfectly perfect. Perfectly perfect. And then also he comes with another gripping hand, which would go over there as well. The same idea basically applies as well for Zork. When we look at his hands, same idea. Let's just show you. I'll bring in Zarax's hand so you can see the same Z's on both occasions. And again, I just swapped out Zork's hands right there. I popped this hand out and I replaced it with the trigger firing hand. Works the exact same way. And then also Zork has some swappable hands as well. Yeah, there's the paint. It found it, see, it disappeared, but it reappeared just like that. He also comes with a pair of gripping hands as well. So those are all the accessories. They don't technically come with a lot, but it come with necessary accessories, the things I think they should have included. I think Zarax actually uses a pistol, if I remember correctly, in that episode as well. That has been omitted from this release, but again, I like the larger firepower myself. I'm probably just going to be displaying the figures with those anyways. Oh, one last thing. They also come, of course, with their tails. Another thing that has carried itself over from Leatherhead. I've already gone ahead. And actually, funny thing is, when I'm going to be talking about the posability on these figures, none of the joints were stiff on these figures, and I found the tails went in with ease, like a knife through butter. Popped this in place, and as you can see, you got some posability going on there. And then when we look at Zork, same idea. You just have to attach the tail in place. Exact same tail as the infantryman, the Triceraton infantryman that we're going to be comparing these guys to in a second, because they do share some similar mold elements. And I'm fine and down with the idea that they use similar molds if it means that we get brand new figures. And I think in the case of arms, legs, sometimes hands, most of the time feet, I'm fine the fact that they want to reuse those molds simply so that we can get brand new figures. Anyways, let's have a look at Captain Zarax, or in this case, Captain Xarax with the A. And you can see he looks quite good. In the cartoon, I believe he's a lighter color than this. Not quite a peach, but a very soft yellow. Not even quite this color right here. In the case of the figure, they've made him a little bit darker. And again, I'm fine for the idea that they went darker, the approach with this guy. He's kind of more of a custard yellow with very noticeable darker yellow around the area to shadow some of the parts, like the side of his face, for example, the side of his arms, and of course the legs. We've all seen this stuff been applied in previously looked at figures. One thing I do really like about this particular figure, it's a little harder to kind of get your hand in there, but he does have an open and closed mouth. I had no difficulty getting it before. You just kind of get your finger on the side of it, and he does have an open and closed mouth. They have done a great job of darkening the inside of that mouth, making it such a barren wasteland in there that just enough that you can still see his tongue. And the mouth does open and close quite a bit, something that the infantryman didn't possess. So I do like the fact that they did have the open and closed mouth. When we do have a look at Zork, like I said, it's just really difficult to get your finger in there. Just kind of get your finger in there. What I do like is the fact that both the figures actually possess this. There we go. There we go. Again, when it comes to displaying the figure, probably going to go the route of the open mouth, because I just think it looks a lot cooler. You can probably tell how excited I am with this lineup of turtle toys. Getting cartoon turtles, unheard of. Of course, Playmates had done this a long time ago, but not really to the level that NECA is churning out these brand new cartoon-inspired turtles. I'm just loving, again, the design of these. I mean, look at the expression on the face of Captain Zarax. I do think they did a bang-up job, especially adding all that additional panel lining right on the under areas of his eyes, giving those wrinkles time to shine. They've actually added some sculpting as well to the top horn, as well as the horns on the top. Kind of looks like a little turkey. You know, when you see sometimes, lamb chops? Sometimes they put little things on the tops of lamb chops. Is that what they do? Right on the top? It kind of looks like he's got that same similar thing happening. The plastic is generally quite semi-gloss. It has a little bit of sheen to it, as you can probably see as I'm rotating the figure around. The light bounces off of it, but not to the point where it takes too much away from the sculpt. Again, everything that's on this figure has been outlined in black, even like the little warts and markings on the sides of his head and the back of his head and all down the side of his arm as well. Like in the cartoon, he's got this armor piece that goes over top of his body. Essentially what it is just a rubber overlay that looks like it's been glued to the torso itself. In addition to that, he's also got it also on either side of his shoulders. And again, really nice detailing. I like the little skirting that he's got on the front there. And again, this is the back where the tail attaches in place. All the things we saw before. Now, bringing in, again, that Triceraton infantryman that we already had a look at before. Yes, you can see a lot of things got carried over, like the arms. Basically, from the shoulders all the way down to the hands have been remolded and reused. The same thing also applies when you look at the legs. Now, the stopping point, I sure would probably admit, is probably like the knees. The knees are a little bit smaller, I've noticed here on Zarax. They're a little bit bigger when it comes to the Triceraton infantryman. And you can see he's actually got a couple of little wrinkles there on the side that he doesn't seem to, oh, he actually does have on this side as well. So probably like the knees are exactly the same. What's been different is remolding the lower half, where the Zarax has that additional boot that he's wearing, that armor boot with the open toe on the front. Unfortunately, though, when it comes to the articulation, we'll talk about it a little bit in a second. Again, they're painting over the joints. And I guess what it usually just stems from is that they mold the entire figure, and then they probably just paint it after the fact, or they probably paint those individual limbs, and then they just attach them in place. I think in the case of the legs, they probably could have done away with painting over the yellow joint, and instead swap that out for the gray joint, just because obviously when the more times you're moving the foot up and down, the more times that paint sadly is going to be flaking off. But generally I do quite a bit like Zarax, even if you want to call him Captain Zorax or Captain Zarax. Either way, he's a neat looking figure. Let's have a look at his articulation. His head rotates back and forth, and it also moves up and down. He's got a ball socket joint working behind the scenes. They've also colored the back end of his jaw. I'm not really sure why they've done it, other than maybe just to add, if you look at it from just like this angle right here, adding the little bit of black kind of contours the bottom portion of his jaw. You can probably see it right there. That's probably the reasoning why they added that additional black. So it just added a little bit of having that look like it's a separate piece from the rest of his body. That's a good touch. I like that. As for the shoulders, I mentioned earlier that all these figures, both of these figures, seem to possess much more looser joint. Now, I don't know, not loose to the point where things are moving back and forth and flopping around, but normally when you get these figures out of the packaging, you have to kind of really work the joint a little bit. You can also take a hairdryer to it, sometimes to soften up the paint. But I noticed with these particular figures, I didn't have to do that at all. I mean, all the articulation was loose. Well, not super loose, not to the point where, let's just pick up the hand here. Not certainly to the point where, like I said, arms and things were flopping around. Like I said, the joints on this guy are still tight enough, but not to the point where I have to force things. He's got his swivel points on the forearm here. Again, you can bring the arms out almost at a 90-degree angle bend, and you can move the arms forward and back. He has a swivel at the bicep. He has a nice double hinge on the elbow. Look at that panel line going on there. That looks nice. And then he also has the swivel on the hand all the way around. Probably going to have to pop that hand just a little bit more in place, because I think that gauntlet blade, I don't think I put the hand in completely. Despite the fact he does have the torso armor over top of it, he still has a full range of motion with that ball joint in the upper torso. Legs split out. You can go forward and back on the legs. He has a swivel on the top cut of the thigh. He has a single or double hinge on the knee. This is the only point on the figure that's actually still tight on the figure. I'm going to have to loosen that up a little bit, but I did notice it's quite a bit tight on Zarax's leg here. And then rounding out the bottom of it, of course, he's got the articulation in the ankle, moving the ankle back and forth, up and down, and you can technically rotate the feet all the way around. He does have peg holes in the undersides of his feet, but you can already see what I was talking about here. The painting of the joint has now completely just freed itself, revealing the plastic color underneath. Again, I would hope that they could just use the gray plastic, follow the same suit, of course, of the coloring. But again, like a lot of these times, these figures are molded, including the joints, probably as all the same mold. Because again, they're probably not going to be using gray plastic for some specific joints, simply just because if they're only using the plastic mold for just that joint down there, and it doesn't make any appearance anywhere else on the figure, then they have to cast that mold in that specific color, and it gets expensive. That's probably one of the reasons why they paint over the joint. It's a simpler, more cost-effective means. That being said, let's move on over to now Zork. Again, I kind of not sure really which one I like more. Both of them bring something different to the table, yet still looking very similar to one another. Zork, I remember in that episode, actually rammed himself into the side. I think it was a bus, sticking his top horns, of course, into that and then pulling it out. Now, the coloring on this guy, like in the episode, is a little off. He's more of a, in this case, kind of the color of what I would describe as avocado green. I don't know why I had to pronounce that the way that I did. Sort of an avocado green. In the episode, I think it's actually more of a muted, not a dark green, but it's kind of like a gray-based green. And again, I don't mind the fact that they brighten the colors on both these figures, giving us this avocado green Zork. I don't know why on these two figures, I'm also thinking of that Claymation Christmas episode from the 80s. I don't know if anybody remembers that, where there was a Triceratops and a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And there was several different Claymation shorts, including one from the California Raisins. Again, whenever I look at this, I'm thinking of that Claymation Christmas. Anyways, like Zarax, you can get in there and you can open up the mouth on Zork. Zork's a little easier to open up, but works the exact same way. You can see they darkened the color. And I think on the back, they didn't paint all the color, whereas Zarax had the black all the way to the back. Zork, you can see, still has a little bit of the green showing through. It's probably likely due to the fact that the molding on the bottom of his jaw is slightly different from Zarax. But like a lot of the same mold elements are still used. Now, a different head, of course. Let's just bring the two in so you guys can see the difference between the two. It's definitely not the exact same head. Nor is the torso plate that covers over the main generic torso. This is definitely different from this one over here. The shoulders are very similar, but still different enough to know that they had to use a brand new mold when it came to Zork. Again, I love the coloring on this guy. Kind of that lighter cream yellow on the front, and then the darker green. You've got, again, that additional shadowing just on the side there. Just what a great looking head sculpt. Very big eyebrows. Look at the big eyebrows on this guy. And then, of course, you've got the panel lining all throughout, not only the head, but the rest of his body as well. Love the little wart details that they've added, all outlined black, so they nicely stand out. And like when you get Zarax out of the packaging, Zork does require a little bit of tail connecting and attaching, a little bit of assembly. The only thing that's really required on both these figures is the tail having to be assembled. And once you get those in place, you get a good range of articulation. I didn't even notice actually the fact that the back of the tail seemed to be attached via ball joint. Now, I think it's more pegged in place. Don't force it too much. You have the possibility here, yes. But I think on the back, it's actually just more so the way it's been attached to the figure. And again, you really don't want to force that. Don't break that off, whatever you do. But the colors on this guy is a little bit more muted, a little bit more earth tones with the greens, the browns. Again, you got that cream color around the area of his torso. And this one actually does have that strap that runs across the front of his torso as well. I really do like the way that this one was detailed. Now, even though he technically has this strap, which is a separate bit of plastic, it doesn't seem to limit when you are moving the figure. The only thing I will say, I guess we could talk about the postability on this guy right now. When you are moving this part of the torso, just be careful. When you are moving it back this way, if you don't apply too much pressure, you're okay. If you apply too much pressure, you could run the risk of forcing weight or pressure against this point and causing a stress mark or even breaking that shoulder strap. So you will want to be careful of that. Quickly looking at the rest of the figure, though, before we talk about its posability. Again, a lot of the same elements are reused. The legs, the knees, and the arms are all carryovers from not only Leatherhead, but also the Triceratops Infantryman. Looking at the posability on Zork, it's pretty much the same as Zarax. We'll not spend a lot of time going through this. He has the ball joint on the head, which moves the head up, it moves the head down, and you can rock it back and forth. And of course, we can't overlook the fact he has some really nice articulation in that lower jaw. When I did get this guy out of the packaging, I noticed that one of his horns were slightly off aligned, or it wasn't turned the exact same way. I turned it back, but I don't want to say that's necessarily something that's posable on the figure, because I feel like there's a lot of resistance when I was turning it. I wouldn't want to turn it too much to the point where I'm actually just twisting the plastic on itself, and I could actually just break that off. So I moved it back, but I don't think it's something I would consider to be articulation on the figure. Moving that probably could cause this to be broken off. Definitely don't want to do that. As for the arms work the exact same way. You don't get quite that full 90-degree angle bend, just short of that. Just comes up a little bit short, and it's likely probably due to the fact that they have such a large sculpt on the back of the shoulder there, but you get about 90 degrees. That's not bad at all. The arm moves forward. Technically, you could rotate it all the way around as well. Swivel at the bicep, double hinge on the elbow. Just slipped out of my hand there for a second. Double hinge on the elbow right there. And just have the hand swivel with a hinge back and forth as well. Again, I mentioned this overly. I mentioned this already, but over moving of this, if you're not too careful of the torso, see how when I'm shifting this back and forth, the torso shifts underneath the shoulder strap. And it actually works over top of the waist belt as well. But the thing you really want to be careful of is, see how you're moving it from the front, or I'm moving it from the front. It gets to a point where it stops right here. And it does the exact same thing on the back here as well. if you're rotating it too much and then you're quickly applying pressure and you jerk that, I feel like you could cause a stress mark or even just rip right through that. So you just want to be careful. Just want to be careful. You're probably not going to want to twist this too much anyways, but just want to give you an FYI. I'm all about giving you guys FYIs. Legs split out. This whole bottom section, we didn't see it so much on Zarax, but it's simply because he's got that loincloth in front of him. But this is all a lower rubber, people call it diapers, but the lower rubber overlay that goes over top of the joints. It does a good job of hiding all the stuff that's underneath that, working effortlessly behind the scenes. Has a swivel on the top cut of the thigh, essentially just where it's shifting and swiveling on that joint. It does have that double hinge on the knee, similar to Zarax, just really tight. And again, on knees are about the thing I'm okay with being tight on figures and remaining tight on figures, because the knees are really the thing that keeps the figure standing upright. Knees and especially ankles. Speaking of ankles, his ankle moves back and forth and swivels back this way as well. While I've got still just a little bit of paint remaining on this side, you can see the paint has completely come free on this side right here. I'm not certainly somebody I would consider that a deal breaker. I mean, again, I completely understand when it comes to companies like NECA Toys producing figures, they still have to be looking at the costs involved with producing figures. I know I've said this in the past, but why they couldn't have used just the same similar plastic to the coloring of whatever that limb is around. But then again, you have to consider the idea that they would have to mold that limb specifically, or that joint specifically, in a different plastic altogether. It's a lot more cost effective on their end just to be molding everything in probably the same color and just painting over top of it. Again, really, when you're looking at it, I mean, I don't see it. I mean, you can see a little bit of it down below here in Zork, but I really don't see enough of that paint wear to find that detracting on the figures. Lastly, again, we'll just bring in the Triceraton Infantryman, try not to get his tail to knock them all over. And again, you've got yourself quite the nice looking trio. I may have even said this when we had a look at the Triceraton and Roadkill Rodney. I would love to get a couple more of those sets. Not only simply just for the fact that we have extra Roadkill Rodneys, you can never really get enough of those, but the fact that we also have extra Triceratons. And I think if Zarax and Zork, or Captain Zarax, depending on how you want to call him, if they are going to be invading Earth after all, you'd like to think that they're going to have more than one infantryman of Triceraton. And all the more reasoning why I think I would want to pick up more of these. Maybe get a couple more, one or two on either side. Quite the dinerific release from the folks over at NECA Toys. Sorry, I had to do that. Finally, we do get ourselves someone to lead the Triceratons. Sure, it's fine and good to have Triceraton infantryman on the planet Earth, but without the leadership and the guidance that I think Zarax could bring, these guys would just be wandering around smashing into cars. You need the leadership, you need the guidance, and thank goodness NECA Toys released Zarax and Zork. Even though technically you may want to even call him Captain Zorax with the O, NECA Toys' release called him Zarax with the A. You do get yourselves brand new figures, reusing some similar molds that we've gotten before. If you've had the Leatherhead or the Triceraton we recently looked at in these videos, you'll know that a lot of the same similar molds have found their way onto Zarax and Zork's body. And again, I'm fine and good for that. If the molds already, or the characters dictate that size of mold, why not just use the exact same body parts? Why are we going to be molding these things from scratch? If it means that we're going to be getting ourselves some brand new turtle toys, I welcome that completely. And again, even when you compare Zarax and Zork to the Triceraton Infantryman, there's enough going on that's different between those figures that you really don't think you're looking at the exact same figure, just simply repainted, because that's not the case at all. You get brand new heads, brand new bodies, at least in their torsos and their lower legs, their lower feet area. Yes, you get brand new turtles. Now, the thing about these figures is in the cartoons, their colors are slightly more muted. You can chalk it up just the way that it was animated, but both Zarax and Zork are definitely more darker and muted colors. And I'm kind of glad to see that NECA Toys, for their release of Zarax and Zork, gave us much brighter figures. These are the things that, obviously, if you're going to be putting on shelves, the brighter the better. And as long as you're still sticking within that color scheme that they have in the cartoon, again, I don't mind the fact that they're slightly more brighter than the way they appeared in that episode. What do you guys think down below? Let me know of the Zarax and Zork. Either you pick the figures up for yourself, or based on this review, what do you guys think of the figures? And again, big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Zarax and Zork that we had a look at in this review. Both should be available. Obviously, both are going to be available because they're sold as a set, but they should be available right now in stores if you want to pick these ones up and add them to your growing Turtles collection. Today we were having a look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Zarax and Zork. Great looking figures. I love Triceratons. If you're certainly new to this channel, new to the channel, and you're liking the content you're seeing here on a regular basis, because we're doing a lot of videos on a regular basis, just make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below and turn the bell notification on. That's your way of telling YouTube you want to be in the know. You want to get those updates of when new videos are posting online. So make sure you hit that bell notification. Don't worry, I sanitize afterwards. And keep your peepers peeled to this channel Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when you'll find new videos popping up. We're going to be having a look at a whole ton of new NECA reviews. I can't really tell you what they are, but I will just say, if you stay to this channel, you'll find a lot of cool NECA reviews coming your way. So again, keep your peepers peeled. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.